guys interviewed for this position. Is that right?
Mr. Gary,
He snuck
Happy
in.
New Year. You know, since Eddie can't get the apartments built, I don't figure anything can get done in Lake Jackson.
You're right.
Poor Eddie.
And it ain't Eddie's fault.
No.
Close enough. Harry, could you lead us in the pledge, please, sir?
I pledge allegiance to the
flag
Of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Harry. Everybody have a chance to look at the minutes? Do we have any yeas or nays on that? All good, we approve the minutes. Visitors' comments, if there's anybody here that would like to speak to something that's not on the agenda, now's the time. In general, anybody that comes to speak, please state your name and address for the record. Item D, discuss and consider preliminary and final review and action on replat of Lighthouse Baptist subdivision out of tracks 2 and 3 of replat of Part H Blunk Road subdivision filed on March 1st, 2022.
I don't see any of the interested parties here, so I don't know whether you want to act on this thing or not. The plat itself isn't a problem whatsoever. There aren't that many problems associated with that one. There is a typo that needs to be redone, but I don't know whether you want to run through this thing anyway.
Anything different than what we've already seen?
No, this is just making it official, where the Colorado Guitar development is now. Hasn't been completed yet, but they are in the process, and soon they will be asking for occupancy permit. In order for this thing to be completed the way it's supposed to be, that track right now is divided up into 2 tracks, and it has to be, assembled back into just one. And this is the reason for this plat. The only thing is a misspell, a typo, which can be corrected.
Where's that, Sal?
This is at the corner, right next to the Lighthouse Church, right there.
No, I know where it is.
Where's
Where's
the
the typo?
Oh, it's on the name of the street behind there, which is Blunk, misspelled.
Oh, yeah, North Point. So.
No.
No, like I said, it's insignificant, but, we can always approve it and be signed off later, or we can just make a correction there, handwritten correction there.
Is this a strange timing to be doing this after they're building it, or?
No, we knew about this thing all along from the get-go. If
Okay.
you remember, we said we will be bringing this thing back later on.
Okay.
First thing was the rezoning that went on for so long, trying to get that thing rezoned in the proper business use.
I would make a motion that we approve the preliminary and final review and action of the replat at the Lighthouse subdivision out of tracks 2 and 3 of the replat of part of, I think it should be South Blunk or North Blunk, is that what?
No, it's just,
Blunk
Spelling of block.
Blunk, it was
the
misspelled.
Blunk
Lord.
misspelling is instead of a K.
With the,
it's
with the repair of the spelling.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any more?
Jeff, is that legal?
Yeah, I mean, we do it all the time. You just handwrite,
Handwrite it over.
write it in, and then once it's signed, it's filed, it's good.
The initials by it.
Yep.
For the engineers, it's spelled right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Matt.
You're welcome, man.
Item E, discuss and consider setback requirements for property that abut green space.
This is our city manager's item, and he would speak to that.
Thank you. Excuse my casual attire, I just got out of soccer practice.
Oh?
Well,
What team do you play for?
I coach.
Oh, I was like, man, I'm missing.
Yeah, let's correct that.
We were gonna come watch.
Yeah. We had a citizen approach the mayor a couple of weeks ago, well, I get probably more than a couple of weeks ago, after we put a stop construction, no, it wasn't even stop construction, it was a plan submittal. So they were going through the process correctly, and they had submitted to build a building that was over 200 square feet, so it was larger than an accessory structure. And so what that means is, anything over 200 square feet has to be built in the buildable area. And so he backs up a park, Key Club Park specifically. The request or the conversation that the mayor had from the citizen was, on the setback requirement of 15 feet, was it necessary when it backed or abutted a green space? In pretty much a park or a drainage, right of way. And it's a question that's never been asked before. Usually when we discuss setbacks, we're always thinking, home to home. And so it was a question that I really couldn't answer to ponder. The council discussed it at their previous meeting. And they thought, well, they would really like to get feedback from the planning commission before, if they were going to make a change, to really see, are there some negative consequences that we may not be thinking of?
Could you give us the address for that property?
I do not know
It's
that.
the corner of Dogwood and Daffodil.
627.
And I don't want to get locked on a specific property, because the discussion will, if it's decided to change, it would affect a lot of properties
Yeah.
if we wanted to. And so it's not specific to one property, but we have an example. That's where the discussion started. So that's the question that council has posed, to planning commission for, your opinion, to see if there would be ramification if there was a change. We're also posing this same question also to the Parks Board. And that's ran concurrently tonight. I didn't get a chance to attend. So they can give you input as well, and/or the planning, the city council on the subject. We did go out, Anna Marie did a quick, survey. I believe it's in your packet. It looks like R2 setbacks here. And this survey was really just trying to see how we compare to other cities in the area. And really, this is just the R2 zoning, or what we could determine was close to our R2 zone in a particular city. And so you can see their front, side, and rear setbacks. We are 15, and you can see some others as well. So it varies. What we were really looking for, to see if there was a noted exception. We were really looking to see if anybody had ever, tried to, make an alteration, for this circumstance. We could not find any except for Pearland, but Pearland was more stringent. So if the home, and it was really it was a rear or a side setback, that if it was next to a thoroughfare, the setback was greater. But we couldn't find anything that offered a lesser one. That doesn't make it right or wrong. We were just looking for, what other communities were doing. So this is the data here for you. And really, it's now up for your discussion, unless you have any other more questions from me.
Isn't the main argument for setbacks in general for fire reasons?
I did talk to the building official about that, and his opinion was no, that they have other code requirements that would restrict, something other than setback. David may have a different interpretation of that.
I can speak to that matter. There's multiple reasons why you have setbacks between property lines and setbacks between buildings. Some of it has to do with fire access. A lot of it has to do with density and light and ventilation. Once you start getting buildings close together, you lose the light, you lose air movement. It's not, grass doesn't grow, and water then starts to collect, and drainage becomes poor. So there's multiple reasons why you would need specific setbacks. Now, without trying to focus on this one lot, we did have multiple conversations with the gentleman before he applied, We visited the site. We told him of the different avenues which he could take, and he does currently have a request through our office to go to the ZBA, which is another avenue for his particular case. But, you know, the broad question tonight is, should there be a exception in the zoning ordinance for that particular?
Yeah. In this instance, there is also there's a utility or drainage easement back there, which is, I believe, 7.5 feet. So if, you know, in this instance, if you were looking at, if someone was exploring an alternate, you know, I guess the question he raised, you know, why does it have to be 15 feet out back to a park? Why couldn't it be 10 feet?
Well, I guess that's why I'm kind of looking at this. We've got all this stuff from all these different cities talking about the setbacks. Setback is not the issue. If he were building a 200 square foot building, we would not be here.
That's correct.
The issue is not the setback, so we don't even need to focus on that. The issue is, should there be an exception backing up to a park or an open space of some sort to increase the square footage allowed of an outbuilding? That's what we need to focus on, not setbacks.
And that actually may be, that may be the better way to approach it is there an ordinance change? Are you looking, and we discussed that, or thought about, should we be looking at setbacks or should we be looking at accessory structures? And that's probably an excellent point. That may be the easier way, is that do you allow an accessory structure to be larger if it's next to a park or a drainage and not next to another home?
I mean, because as I look at it, we're right in line. We may be a little less, but we're in line. Our setback requirements are reasonable. So that's not the issue. That's why I thought, okay, what is it? The gentleman came, and the reason it got brought to here is not the setback. It was the size. And that's when I read, because I read the council comments, you know, from Vinay. Well, then what happens if one of the parks is going to be resold? That happens so rarely. I would say, yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. But we need to focus on whether or not it's appropriate to increase the size, and then if so, to what size?
And
It
he is,
opens a can of worms if you increase, if you allow just one person to do it, then you're gonna have to end up doing it all over the city. It's gonna have to be an ordinance change that we may not want.
I know, and I don't disagree, but it's to
and that was
consider.
my recommendation to council, is that if you didn't want, if council was open to this, that it would probably be best as an ordinance change, because going to the ZBA, I didn't see a hardship. The lot's bigger, it is a corner lot, so there's plenty of room, so I couldn't foresee a particular hardship, even though he still has that right to go to the ZBA.
Sure.
But
But
I don't understand why it's a hardship if he, you know, he knows what the size of the building is supposed to be and he wants to have it 100.
What is the purpose of the building? What is he wanting to do with it that would not, I mean,
So we don't take, first of all, when an applicant comes in to our office, we can't take a look at the use of the building.
get that.
And try and make exceptions based on the use. This is nothing more than storage and a wood workshop. He does have, in this particular case, he does have an existing shed that's adjacent to his garage. That's gonna go away as part of this project. And because of how the shape of his L-shaped house on that particular lot does not leave him very much space for a backyard, which is why he believes he would have a hardship. Now, that whether or not the ZBA determines that, or in Sherry's instructions to the ZBA that the hardship can't be self-imposed or a financial thing, but that's going to be his particular argument in this case.
what is the self-imposition of it? He has a home that he purchased that was shaped a certain way. Is that he's choosing to take down an old shop and try to build a new, larger shop that's new, that encompasses everything?
Yeah, it's a self-imposed condition.
Matt, this is why lawyers like talking. It was just like,
What are the limitations on auxiliary buildings?
So you can have a accessory structure up to 50% of your livable area.
Is that just R2 or
No, that's across most of the residential zones.
all but these
Now,
states?
there is an exception to state that if
Yeah.
your accessory building were 200 square feet or less, you could move that to within 5 feet of your property line. But the constraining factor here is that he has an easement. So he couldn't get to the property line, but he could get to the edge of the easement if his building were less than the 200 square feet. He's building one that is approximately 360 square feet. Or proposing to build
Is there
one.
also a difference if it was attached to the garage?
If it's attached to the garage, it's considered a home addition, and it's gonna be subject to the same setbacks.
The same setback, 15?
Yeah, 15 feet.
If I recall, he can encroach up to 5 feet if it's 200 square feet or less. Is that right?
That's correct.
So in addition, attaching to the home, he can't encroach.
Yeah. That removes that.
So we did talk to him about building a structure that was 200 square feet, and then as need provided, coming back in at a future date and putting another structure, because there's no limit per se as to how many accessory structures you can have, just so long as you don't cover more than 35% of your lot with a roof.
Okay.
So how close is he gonna be to that? Do you know? Close to-
His proposal would be to scooch all the way up to that easement line, which would increase his available
7.5
use 7 feet. The easement is,
Okay.
it's 8 feet on his side of the fence.
Well, I'd feel more comfortable arguing before the zoning board of adjustments that it is a hardship than changing everything. And I think a good argument could be made that it is not a self-imposed hardship, that he's improving the property. But I'll leave that for him and whoever he appears. But I think, you know, Sherry's looking at from all sides, protecting the city's interests and the ordinance interest, but I think that is a wobbly interest there, in that regard, because I think the city's interest would be preserved better keeping what we have and allowing it to go to the zoning board of adjustment.
Another consideration is the farther back you get, it's probably the lower the elevation, and you've got a mosquito lake underneath this probably raised auxiliary building.
I doubt it's gonna be raised.
No, they didn't say, but that's typical.
A building of that size is most likely gonna be slab on
You
grade.
think it'd be a slab? Yeah.
A smaller shed would lend itself to being on skids and blocks, but a building of that size is most likely gonna be slab on grade.
Seems like that might be a consideration in the ordinance, if there's one versus the other, it might make a difference.
Well, with any structure, you would be required to grade appropriately so the water flows away from the
What?
building. With any structure, the requirement would be that grading would move water away from that structure, so it wouldn't pool underneath or wouldn't pool around. And then that'd be something we would discuss with an applicant at the time of their construction before final.
But I'm sure the drainages in all these lots through town, there's no general standard. Most of them go to the front. I don't know if you could say most, but there's a design to the front of the house or the back of the house, and it gets a complicated issue potentially.
Joe?
Everything else.
I'm not for changing anything. I'm kinda like Jeff, if, let it go to ZBA, but, you know, did we do this, did we do it for somebody else, then somebody else does it, somebody else wants to do it, and that, in a different spot, you're gonna create issues. I think we need to,
I thought we'd changed something on auxiliary building. Was it just 200 feet and less square feet,
it
or?
has to have a roof. They have to have roofs now.
There was a change made, and I don't remember the exact year, but it was changed to allow for the encroachment into that setback for 200 square feet or
Right,
less.
I mean, we've
Okay.
done that
Yeah.
And we
since
also
I've been on commission.
allow pools, regardless of their size, to go within 5 feet of the property line of both side and rear, or to that easement line, because that structure is underground and not above ground.
Yeah, my memory is, was the crux of that discussion really was trying to define, what an accessory structure was.
Exactly.
Corner lots would be another exception or consideration.
I think, is
Is
this?
this
Which lot is it?
That one?
There's 6 corners.
It's hard to see. This is the park here. The garage is probably right there. My guess is the garage ends right there. That's probably the rear setback line right across here, which is 15 feet. And then I think there's a little shed that's right here within the fence line. Yeah, and again, the key question, is still is like, should there be an alternate rule for either setback or accessory structure when there's nothing behind them? I don't know.
We have a lot of these, this kind of layouts in this city with all the parks we have. We have a whole lot of people wanting to do something similar to what this guy's looking.
We didn't define green space. Green space was left open because that could be drainage.
It could be a
dra-
waterway. it could be a
Waterway, drainage
pond.
ways. We didn't define anything. We were trying to allow the discussion to be as vague as possible, in case you wanted to be open but have restrictions. So right now we have it defined as green space.
Modesto, what's the solution you see?
I really don't know if there's a solution other than what Mr. Gilbert suggested to you roll the dice and see if B and Z agrees and it's a one situation. But we may have different opinions of what a hardship is.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
it's not black and white.
I mean, I could argue against what he wants to do, because I think my old neighborhood, not my current neighborhood, we had houses surrounding a park like this. Well, if everybody built a 360 square foot building all the way around that park, nobody could enjoy the park. They'd be seeing a lot of buildings encircling.
And that applies to the greenway, 'cause you said you were leaving it open. I mean, I know there's been all kinds of talks about extending paths and whatnot through our drainage system, fairways. So if we have buildings built up on top of that, I think it's a,
Yeah, and I'm probably the worst person to talk about this. I'm an administrator. I follow rules. Legislators are legislators to create and change rules.
Well, I'm a mediator. I try to find solutions that make everybody equally unhappy, but reach a resolution. And I've been trying to think this one through. And that's why I'm glad to see this, because actually this kind of helps me decide more what I'm doing, because we have a lot of neighborhoods with parks like that, with houses surrounding them in our
Exactly.
city.
Yeah.
Matt?
I mean, I think leaving it open with such vague description is gonna present even more argument to the fact that it can be shortened. I don't think it's a good idea personally. I think that leaving the space off the parks and off the greenways is going to benefit anybody and pretty much everybody in the long run. But at the same time, like Mr. Gilbert said, it's like it's either or. I could change my opinion in 2 years when 3 neighbors need that thing or
Well, the thing is,
I
he's
just-
not asking us to change the setbacks. He's
Yeah.
asking us to change the size.
Yeah, I don't.
That's really the issue.
Yeah.
Well, Oracle from Baylor, do you have any mediating solution?
I really don't. I wanted to look at it and see, but this is an example, though, because sometimes you say back to a park, whether it's linear or there's green space, it's linear. But this is literally, it wraps around a park, but it's not a large park.
Thelston, can you get closer? Would a ground view help, or is this fine? Is this
I mean,
fine?
sure could.
I just didn't want to get
What's
too
that?
specific, because if it's an ordinance change,
It affects everybody
It affects
on the,
everybody.
it affects everybody.
all the way around.
Is that parking there on the curb?
That's his driveway.
His driveway.
This is the side of his house here, where you see
Well, I
the
know where
driveway.
this house is now.
Is that 2 houses there or 1 big house?
You can't get to our,
his garage has a walkway from the house, so.
My thought is, you know, we do this, and then we've got, folks along that, parkways behind Magnolia and all these other places, we can end up in the same situation, folks want to do something along those lines, that's,
And I bet his garage is full of junk anyway.
Whose is it?
I have no idea. Everybody's is. That's why the storage people are making so much money. That sort of doesn't show a garage, does it?
Go to your right.
Oh, yeah, I know that house.
Keep up.
Okay,
Yeah, so there's the garage.
all right.
A three-car garage too.
Nice house.
And then you can see
You want us to put how big of a building in that back?
the park.
they doesn't have a fence either, does it?
No, he does.
There
Yeah,
is,
very
now,
short.
there is room to build the 360, I mean,
Uh-huh.
even
like the
within
whole
the building
backyard.
area, but it does take up, it gets closer to his house.
Yeah.
Yeah, his-
You see the little portable building right now that he's got there?
Yeah, that would go.
And again, my guess is that the garage is probably on the setback.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It looks like the little accessory building is beyond it.
It is, and it can be, it just can't be in the
Over.
easement, but it probably is.
And
Is
that's,
that the property line right there drawn on the sidewalk?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right there.
just about, yeah.
With that line, they always break the sidewalk off with the property lines. Not always, but majority of the time.
Can you go a bit further and then and then have a back shot of it?
They just redid that park too.
Probably get more.
It's quite nice.
more people have no
Don't like
privacy,
it.
do they?
Yeah, a little bit further.
Just get a map,
Yeah.
look in your house.
Good family friends of mine live right across the street from this.
That's Key Club Park.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's JSA or something.
I'm always trying to come up with solutions for people that I'm just like,
I'd have to leave it be.
Yeah, I agree.
And thankfully, he was doing it correctly. He
no,
came
he's
in.
doing everything we wanted to
He
do,
came-
trying to follow
right.
the rules.
It
So
was a
I'm trying
good
to
thing
come up-
that it wasn't caught afterwards. We were telling someone to tear it down. We have done that, so we, praise him for going through
Yeah.
the correct steps.
Absolutely.
If I can, I'd like to caution any attempt to allow individual to increase their shed or building or any of that structure unless we run the number and ensure that we are not encroaching and reducing the green space of these property. You know,
Well, anytime you get larger, you're gonna,
So in this particular application, we have done that. He has the space to put the building he wants there and still be within his 35% lot coverage. He does have a considerable amount of room in front of his house and on the side of his house, which is where most of his green space is eaten up. So if his home builder had moved that house closer to Dogwood, he couldn't have gotten really closer to Daffodil, but closer to Dogwood, he would have had an additional space in the backyard. But he's still within that 35%.
and I guess what I'm saying in terms of my problem, if we do anything, when I'm looking at all those homes surrounding that park, because they don't have a corner lot, even if they wanted to do something larger, saying we changed it, they would take up probably wouldn't remain with 35% of their green space would be, or it'd be harder because they don't have a big corner lot where he has.
Well, obviously each individual parcel is going to be different in
Different,
regards
right.
to how much building could they put back there and still be within
With
that
this one,
allowance.
do you have a recollection of how much he would?
Yeah, after removal of his existing shed and adding in that proposed building, he was at about 29.8%.
Okay.
if I recall. It was somewhere very close to that, but it didn't exceed 30 or 31. It was right in that ballpark.
Okay.
Does anybody have a suggestion or a motion to make on this?
I've already said it, but I'm in favor of leaving it like it is and go to ZBA if we need to, or go to council and change the ordinance, but I think we start doing one, that's just my thought.
John, you good with that?
Yeah, I am, and we don't necessarily have to do a motion, right? We just,
Right.
No, it was seeking, council was seeking guidance as to our thoughts.
They were seeking your guidance and opinion. They may still make a change and see that there's a change, and it may come back to you and say, have a public hearing.
No,
And get input. But right now, before they made a decision, they were asking your thoughts.
yeah, I'm not in favor of making a change either.
I just remember we went through doing the accessory structure things, changing it. There's reasons we said it the way we did.
Here, you good with that path forward? Joe? Good. Matt?
Good, Primo.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item F, discuss appropriate zoning and regulations for food truck parks.
Yikes.
Mr. Sanchez, will you pull up that PowerPoint? So council asked that we bring to the planners idea of zoning for a food truck park. What might that look like? Where might that go? What use is consistent with that? And I want to state that we're talking about a food truck park or a food truck court where more than one food truck would park on a prolonged basis. Not the individual food trucks that you see up and down Plantation, as an example. The City Council is working on a different ordinance currently to address what individual food trucks might look like on a single lot. So we're talking about a developed parcel that would lend itself to having food trucks there on a permanent or semi-permanent basis. So some of the things that staff had come up with as far as considerations. You want to flip the page? Again, food truck parks are becoming quite popular in communities. And you just have to do even a quick Google search and you'll find that they're popping up more and more communities. And they're quite popular. Austin has a park that they've had for many years. Houston has had several pop up. Katy has one that started out as a private development. Actually, it's still a private development. It's owned by the mayor, but when she started it, she wasn't the mayor. Not Katy, Humble. Humble, yeah. And there's a quite large one up in Waco owned by some pretty famous people. But we've had 3 individuals approach my department and say they want to do a food truck park. We haven't seen it really take off yet, but we need to put some standards in place so that when somebody does come, we can say, yep, that's zoned appropriately. These are the minimum features that the food truck, the park would need to have. And so we can guide them to successfully open, operate, make money, and be an attraction for the city of Lake Jackson. So we're talking about zoning and what might that ordinance look like. You want to flip the page? Some of the things that we need to talk about is the need for a commissary or a central food preparation facility. That's where your food truck goes on a daily basis to offload wastewater, onload potable water, and onload food products to clean. And as part of that, they would have to keep some sort of log sheet or verification that they did move off that site and appear at the commissary. A food truck court would have to have a grease interceptor because the permanent nature of the food truck going and residing in that spot would lend itself to have to be hooked up to a waste connection, potable water connection, and as part of that waste connection, there would have to be a grease interceptor. We're talking about a mobile food unit, an MVU, which is a truck, a cart, a trailer, something built to prepare and serve food. And then we're going to talk about TFER, which is the Texas Food Establishment Rules. Those are the Texas DSHS rules that affect all restaurants and food establishments.
Are we
So,
ta-
zoning consider, yes, sir?
Are we talking about events, limited time events?
No, we're talking about
It's a permanent.
somebody buying a parcel, or
mobile
taking
park for
a
food
parcel
trucks.
and developing it so that you could have food trucks there on a permanent basis.
Permanent, okay.
Permanent basis. Food trucks, plural.
Not like we're doing on the first Sat weekend or such.
Yeah, not, those are special events.
Okay.
Those food vendors, they come in, they park for that event, they leave, they come back at a different time, maybe do a different event, and again, they leave. So, zoning considerations, obviously, you've got the differentiations between business zones, other commercial and industrial zones, and residential zones. So you'll need to decide what zone best fits a business such as a food truck court. Some of the things we had looked at were zones that currently allow for fast food establishments, including drive-through food establishments. Because of the nature of a food truck, you've got people coming and going from that location, and they're not going to be there for a full sit-down type meal where you're having food, waiters come and take you through courses and whatnot. So we looked at what zones currently allow for restaurants and fast food restaurants. That's the B1, the B2, and of course, a PUD. Or PUD or PURZ? No, PURZ, PUD, okay. I get the two confused. Obviously, one of the things you might look at is what kind of buffers required between a food truck court and residential businesses. I'll flip again. Oh, you're ahead of me. So, TFER requires that mobile food units be mobile. They have to be able to move. Even though you might be hooked up to a permanent connection at that site, you would still have to move that food truck from that site and somewhere else. Now, if it's in a food truck court, the allowance might be that they can be there without having to move on a daily basis, since the commissary is right there on site. They're connected to their wastewater, they're connected to their power, and they're connected to their potable water. The food truck court would have to have restrooms available for the people working the food trucks and the
What
patrons.
about their clients?
For the patrons as well, yes, sir.
Pardon?
For the patrons, yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, that just says the personnel, but,
That's what TFER requires for a food truck.
That's for
Okay.
the health
Yeah.
issue, to
okay.
make sure they can go
all right,
wash their
sure.
hands.
You're talking about for us, all right.
So, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality says you have to have grease, fats, oils, and greases through a grease interceptor. All restaurants have a grease interceptor. Most of them are outside the restaurants, underneath a couple of manholes. Some of them have smaller ones inside the kitchens, but they all have a method to separate grease from wastewater, and that grease has to be emptied out of that grease interceptor once every 90 days. Well, up to 90 days. Sometimes it's more often than that, but 90 days is the minimum servicing. Toilets, hand washing sinks, and other gray water does not go through that grease interceptor. Only grease-laden waste. So some of the things you might consider as far as park amenities and requirements: on-site restrooms, trash receptacles. Do you want to have screening by the dumpsters? How many parking spaces are going to be required? Do the vehicles have to be on a improved surface? What kind of signage would be allowed? Does there need to have a certain amount of on-site dining and seating available? Landscaping, whether there needs to be permanent power and waste connections, the on-site commissary, and then parking, of course. So we took a look at our current ordinance as it relates to high turnover and fast food. and we took a look at just general spaces. We also looked at alternate parking methods. So how many parking spaces would the planning commission recommend that they have either per square footage of truck, per square footage of parking pad, or is it there a set number per truck? And of course, whenever you start talking about requiring parking, you have to include an accessible element, which is 1 parking space for every 25 parking spaces available. So there's some thumbs ups and some thumbs down when it comes to food truck courts. 1 location with multiple choices. It provides a destination inside Lake Jackson that for people who might be looking for a dining experience. It could help revitalize neighborhoods. It provides dining to areas with limited options. And a food truck has a lower startup cost than a brick and mortar building or restaurant. However, they're in direct competition with our brick and mortar restaurants. And it would increase traffic to certain areas. And of course, if you have a food truck court and you don't require power, then you're going to have generators going. And a food truck court might also want live music. So this just kind of wraps up everything that we just talked about.
Is there a question of allowing generators or not?
Well, again, that's one of the things that we would have to incorporate into an ordinance. Staff's recommendation would be permanent power and water hookups, so that we don't have to deal with generator noise.
Noise
That
and
and
smell?
alcohol and enclosed.
Well, so you'd have to, I mean, what you're really trying to get is somebody, like you mentioned, the mobile home park, but somebody, an investor, to agree to create a location for people to set these up and put in the infrastructure and the plumbing and the power.
That's correct, and in return, they would be able to lease out that space to that food truck and for a certain amount of time.
And I've been to the place in Humble and in Waco, and that's what they had done. I mean, it's a pretty nice, and it's a fun place to
Porter
go.
also, the one in Porter's done a really good job. That's privately held. Yeah, no generators. BYOB.
Yeah, and David alluded earlier, we've had 3 people,
Dr. Anderson.
discuss it with staff, and right now, we have no guidance, it's not zoned. And we said, we need to work on this, and so this is why it's.
I can think of some places it would be nice if somebody had access to it to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Do
And
they
I think there's
specify?
still-
Plantation needs a
Out of the
revitalization.
3, 2 have kind of dropped off, but 1 still has a serious interest, and they're still,
Do they
Kick-
specify
kick off.
where, location?
I think they're specifically looking at downtown,
Uh-huh.
But where in downtown?
an open.
I think that's pretty limited.
An open spot.
An open
Which
spot.
person owns the most buildings that need to be torn down there that's next to an open spot?
And by the farmer's market or
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah, yeah.
And that grease trap
Or
looks
the old
like
Church's
something-
Chicken slash
That grease trap looks like
Sonic.
something you find 50 years from now
Well,
when you're
and the thing is,
revitalizing downtown.
If somebody
could
were
be.
able to do something like that near downtown, it also would, for workers in the buildings or near, it would be people go there for lunch a lot. They
Yeah.
meet after,
So we have 2 downtown restaurants that use a food truck permanently mounted as their kitchen. Now, they're inspected just like a commercial kitchen is. And so all we're talking about in this case is should we zone one or more, should we include zoning for the development of an area where more than one food truck can park, so people can go and enjoy the dining. It can't be specific to a lot. It needs. We're talking about the overall zoning question.
The entrepreneur would have to propose that.
That's correct, and like I said, we've had 3 people come. One person made a play at a lot on Plantation. That lot was sold out to somebody else, and so she has since purchased property in Brazoria to forward her dream of a food truck court. The other serious player has property in the area, and they could develop it if we can provide some guidance for them.
Nothing up there in anything that you mentioned included security. And I think that is something that, is nowadays, I think it's something which would have to be considered very strongly in developing one of these.
And you say they have to be movable, or that's what y'all are proposing or talking about?
The food truck itself would have to be movable. The question, so we have in front of council right now some suggestions for a proposed ordinance that would require the food trucks to actually move off of a site every day. And again, we're talking about the single food truck parked on a lot. That way we can make sure that they are movable, that they haven't set up permanent residence. In this case, you're looking for an exception to that, meaning you could move your truck onto that site and it wouldn't have to move every day because it's already at its commissary. It's already at its water supply source, and it's already at its wastewater source. So you could say, you know, a food truck could move onto the court and be there for 14, 30, 90 days without having to move. But it's still mobile because it still runs and the tires are still inflated and the vehicle's still
We're
licensed.
excluding portable housing. I mean, portable buildings. You could move it with it everywhere, but it doesn't have tires. We've worked in them, we've gone to school in them.
But that's not what these food truck, these are all on
Well,
wheels.
but does it necessarily, or should it be limited to just mobile?
Yes.
Because?
Well, in this
Well,
case, we're
let's go
talking.
through that because of the nature of what they are, the size of them. Because I think I'd be absolutely opposed to something allowed outbuildings like y'all worked at Dow or like are attached to our elementary schools until we redid them. Those are ridiculous. Those are permanent structures, and that's not what this is. That would not be something that had the amenities that I think any developer for these. I mean, if you ever go to any of these, you see what they are. These half of the appeal is not just the food; it's also just whatever trailer and how they decorate them. Some of them are very vintage, but they become a destination. So I think that's why you would exclude a portable building put on cinder blocks. I don't know that it would have to be moved that often. I'm trying to figure out, I don't know what it is. I'm office across for where all the food trucks that operate in the county come to get inspected. So almost every morning I see 2 or 3 food trucks lined up out in front of, I don't know what's in the emergency services building, but that's where they go to get inspected. I guess they may have health, but
So
there's a purpose
oftentimes,
that they do that.
oftentimes you'll find a food truck parked out here as it's being inspected by our health inspector and our fire marshal. And
Yes.
from that point, then they go to their location, whether it's a day event or if they're just looking for a general license to sell
The
within
fire
the city.
marshal's in there for the county, and I see them out there looking at the hookups, the lines.
Is there a provision, David, that would prevent, you know, people living there? In their trucks, their food trucks?
You know, I would like to say that a person wouldn't, but I could see somebody doing that, and that would really be an enforcement issue, because they can't technically live in a food truck. You know, not just from a practical standpoint, but the Texas Food Establishment Rules, which governs health inspections and health code, wouldn't allow for occupancy in a food truck. And you could definitely say, as part of the ordinance, that you can't put an RV out there, you know, for somebody to live in, and if they were occupying it as a residence, at that point you could say this is an RV, not a food truck. So there are ways that could be worked into the ordinance, but a food truck itself shouldn't lend itself to easy occupancy for sleeping purposes.
I don't have a problem. I think it's a good idea. it's something different. You know, it is what it is. Some of us been around here a long time, and our ways are going by the wayside, and other things are coming in. It's something you have to, you know, address and move forward. I would like to have more information on this and more study done, whether it be council and whoever else in your department.
It would be interesting, the downtown merchants would probably have an opinion.
Oh, I'm sure. So the question on the table, I believe, is should there be zoning for a food truck? Mr. Reinhardt, what kind of information would you be looking for?
You know, I just think that we need to have, you know, I remember, and I don't remember what business was, but when I was in the mayor's seat, we had a grease interceptor that we shut down 2 or 3 different times. We shut down businesses. Now you have 4 or 5 or 6 food trucks in there. All that's going into one interceptor. So, you know, to me, that's gonna have to have a minimum, if you will.
Yep.
Size.
Yep.
And who's gonna be responsible? Is that gonna be the owner of the food court, the land, the property? Those things I think are, you know, would be some of my questions. I really think it'd be a good idea, and it would be an opportunity for folks to go and mingle, you know. I would like to see it near downtown, or I would like to see it on Plantation, because we're kind of letting the east end of Lake Jackson kind of go by the wayside.
Plantation revitalization.
And it's just, to me, that would be, if there was somewhere place out there, it would be an ideal spot to have instead of one here on this corner, one in this parking lot, one over this place here.
So just for a little history, the first person that brought this idea to us is a business downtown on Parking Way, and she was looking at a parcel right next to the old Church's Chicken, which would have lended itself to a food truck court. That is the one that was sold out from underneath her. She was making a play on it at the same time somebody else was. Somebody else secured it before she was able to. So, so that was the original location that was looked at as far as a food truck court was concerned, and she had it all planned out as far as how many trucks, where the buildings would be, and she was well enough on her way to have made it happen. As for to address your concern about in regards to grease interceptors, the interceptor would have to be sized according to engineering standards for the use. And in this case, we would say, what is the total flow from these trucks, the length of distance to that interceptor, and how do you keep water hot enough to allow for the grease to get to the interceptor before it solidifies in the pipe. As far as servicing is concerned, that would be the owner's responsibility of the food truck court. How he or she split that cost up, or if that was just one of their operating costs, that's not for us to say. But we've already looked at how to properly size the grease interceptor to accommodate for grease interceptor or more than one, obviously depending on how you can make them function on that site.
Did you say they have to be in certain proximity to each source?
Well, the grease-laden waste needs to be able to reach the interceptor
Right.
before it solidifies for that interceptor to work. So yes, there is a distance. What that distance is, Mr. Sargent, off the top of my head, I don't know. But as that park is laid out, we would be working with that plumbing engineer to set
But
the size of that
almost eliminates
interceptor.
the possibility of just one common grease interceptor. If, you know, like your pictures where there were 4 of them.
If that was a suitable design, then there'd be no reason why one common one shouldn't work. What I don't think we want is to have a grease interceptor at each individual parking pad. That wouldn't lend itself to easy servicing, especially if the
That's my
hauler
concern.
is coming
I
at
never
certain
thought about
times.
the grease setting up in the length of the pipe, but that makes sense. And I doubt if they're so sophisticated that they heat the pipe or such, but,
Well, again, that's where your plumbing engineer would have to size it appropriately for the demand and make sure that the grease can get down to that interceptor before nature takes over.
David, is this document up here, it says mobile food establishments. Do you have I guess, a draft of what you think the ordinance would include? Is the city gone to that, the city staff gone to that point?
No, we haven't. We have not brought a proposed ordinance as to what that would look like. And we can and will definitely work on that. Is that something the planning commission would need to discuss potential zones that a food truck court would fit in?
I think Sal and I, since he's gonna retire, will probably open a food truck. And so,
If
be all geriatric food.
unless Sal's investments don't improve, then he might be sleeping in that food truck.
So I'll try to get this on let us go back and put a base list in one column of what staff absolute minimum would like to see in it, and a possible zone or two, and then a column of other options that are not base minimum but could be thrown into that ordinance, and then so you have kind of a little bit of a cafeteria plan to say, we like this item, it should be in there. No, it shouldn't, but staff at least has an idea of base level what we want, in there, and let us put that together and bring that back to you, and then you can pick, and then we can come with an ordinance.
But would it be possible at the same time to maybe include the areas that the staff would suggest?
Well, what I'm hearing from staff right now is that it's whatever a restaurant's recommended in.
I would say it would have to be the same ones as the restaurants, I think. And then you just
No,
limit it to
I
what-
don't mean that. I'm talking about areas, not the zone. I'm talking about where in town.
Oh, I'm thinking, I can only think in zone. It's gonna be like the tattoo parlor. We're gonna have to pick a zone.
Well, I have to interject my side of the equation, even though I would love to have something like this. To me, it makes sense, times are changing, the service and the restaurant costs and everything associated with it are getting so sky high. People need another option out there, the other option being this type. So I'm not against the concept. What I do have a little bit of a problem is the areas. Because, for example, if they're looking for downtown, we have a little special problem downtown. The parking situation is there. Because right now, any building, any person, any business can go out there, set up shop, and don't have to worry about parking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a special condition there. And we don't have a thing to say. We don't have a thing to say about that or landscape or anything else. In this specific case, other areas, there's room. Drainage is gonna become an issue, and I'm sure Mr. Sanchez is gonna jump at that. In a lot by itself, in a plantation, for example, where this person wanted to put in this particular track, the very first thing that we told them, or that we brought up is, we're probably gonna need to have some drainage. Mr. Sanchez is gonna require detention in most cases.
Well, we spoke about that in that part.
Yes.
It's that property right off Plantation Drive, back into Peach Street, across from Lake Honey.
Well,
Add that section.
I have a comment I'd like to make, but listening to all this, I'm kind of same vein as you just mentioned with regard to the downtown part of it, but not, my concern wasn't parking, but my concern is, I think that the competition to the existing brick and mortar businesses could be a real problem. Particularly if it's like right downtown. I just don't, it doesn't seem right to me to do that.
Yeah, the only thing I caution is
And-
that, the city usually just tries not to get into judge the competition business. And so we don't pick how many
Understand.
restaurants
Right.
are in the city, or how many different types of business. And for downtown, I'll differ with Sal on this one, is that any business can go on that vacant lot. I mean, they all do not have to follow parking requirements. That rule has been in existence since I've been here. And we tell them up front, if you develop the lot, you can add parking, but you're not required, but all the parking that you have is what you see. And then they have to operate, with that. And we've said that to every business that's come in.
Except that the nature of this enterprise requires that they have parking, otherwise nobody's gonna go in there.
Except for downtown, all the other restaurants,
yeah.
every other business
I
has
realize
that same requirement, and it's forgiven in the downtown area. So the Worst House came in, it was not required to have parking. If they'd gone to any other place in town, they'd have to meet a parking requirement. Downtown is the exception.
That's correct, that's the reason why I have a little bit of a problem in that specific area.
But they could put a restaurant there,
Yes,
at the
they can.
corner, a full
Yeah.
restaurant.
Yeah, they can, but it is not competing with, the demand that this particular type of business is gonna have is gonna call for tremendous amount of parking. If I'm gonna go in there and gonna pick up anything, if I'm gonna go out there and sit on one of those little tables over there, it's gonna occupy a lot of parking.
But
which you don't have
the
over
dwell time's gonna be less though than a restaurant.
What?
The dwell time's gonna be less than for a restaurant. You go to a restaurant, you're there for an hour, hour and a half, whatever.
Well, correct.
This is gonna be
correct.
5, 10 minutes, you go and get out of there.
This is a pick up and
You
go.
already
product.
have
No, not
a
necessarily.
tremendous
No, a lot of people
Most
hang out
of
at
the
those
year.
places.
amount.
It's gonna be less.
I don't know why they
Let's
wanna
don't
do
get
it
into
for
Yeah.
4
5
to
minutes,
12
10
months of the
minutes.
year,
It's
but you
gonna
actually
be
wanna
less.
sit outside in there.
All right, look here, they're gonna come together with a plan, with
Yep.
trying to cover all the bases. What I'm gonna poll everybody is yay or nay. John, are you thumbs up or thumbs down on the concept, assuming they come up with something that addresses all the issues?
I'm thumbs down.
Thumbs up.
Harry?
I'm sort of neutral. Sorry about that.
I'm thumbs up. Joe?
I'm thumbs up, pending, thumbs
Matt?
up.
So what I get from that is our guidance is go forth and come up with a.
So we'll prepare, just a base level of what staff believes would need to be in there, some possible initial zoning recommendations, and then other things that what other communities do require, or may have asked for, so, that we don't build our base level, and we'll come back in the next meeting.
Does the downtown go all the way to First National Bank, or does it go past that way?
It's all the areas designated right now by zone as B2.
But that goes all the way to First National Bank?
It's on this map.
Okay.
It goes all the way to the highway, and it goes all the way Oyster Creek, it goes all the way down.
Replace the bank with the food trailer.
They're working on,
That's all, and it goes across.
It's all of that.
where's the telephone building? The old telephone building, I guess it's,
That should be right
Right in there.
no, it's over there next to First National Bank.
It's on Westway, right next by the National Bank. Or in that vicinity.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out what street that is. That,
Westway.
okay. What are they building on the corner there? Or is that just a laydown area?
It's a lay down here.
Okay. That area doesn't have much parking, is the point,
Here soon it will.
but not much development either, so.
All right, you good?
Thank you.
Movies into a
Thank you, David. That was a good presentation.
Just one little quick comment. I'm all for this thing. But Lynn Jones, 118 Cypress. The one thing we haven't brought up that I think we need to really consider, having been drugged throughout Houston by my daughter to several food courts, these things quickly become entertainment areas.
Music.
So I think we need to think about that, and that's the ambiance. That's one of the good ambience about the thing, is they bring together decorative trucks, some quirky folks with some quirky foods. But when we start trying to pick a zone, we probably need to consider that whatever happens may become more of an entertainment area than just a place where, because we have a tendency to think about the worker that runs and gets a taco and then goes to work. But these things, when they
That's not
sit
what this
down in
is.
there, and they'll be nice, it'll be great, but I just want us, when we're picking zones and thinking about that, let's consider that it may become more of an entertainment
This
site.
will be a place where bands will set up. They will
Sure,
hire people to have somebody play
Tell her your
music.
name and address.
I did.
Oh, she did. Where families will come and sit out on the tables
You
so
know
their
him?
children can
Yes.
run around.
Yeah.
Okay.
and I agree with Sal. I don't think we ought to put it anywhere near downtown. I'm looking for the east side. Just go to Plantation.
The
I know
plantation
I know there's a
revitalization.
I know there's a grand plan in the works, but I'll never live to see it. So I just soon see a nice food court over there.
The biggest discussion on the zoning on location has been, location to a neighborhood.
Yeah.
That has been, because it can lend itself to outside noise or something, so that's the question is, and that may not mean that it's not allowed, there may be some distance requirement. And that's exactly what's happening now with discussion with council on the individual food trucks is how close can the individual food truck, which there are a couple on Plantation, to a backyard fence, a residential.
Because I think you're gonna have music like what you have at Phil Station on a Friday, Saturday night. You're gonna have music like you have maybe when they have bands at the, or even one person playing at the, you know, at the farmer's market. That's the type of thing that will be around there.
That's very possible and very likely. So when the original proponent came to look at that site on Plantation, we had looked at that site, looked at how many food trucks she was proposing, and we had come up with some metrics to size the grease interceptor. We'd come up with some metrics to figure out how much parking she was going to need. And I had taken a measurement between that site and the residential zone behind Dairy Bar over there on, I can't think of the name of the road. And also that site and the senior apartments that are also located in that area, to say, okay, here's how far that site is away from these. So absolutely, that would be something that the Planning Commission and City Council would have to take into consideration, because it's going to lend itself to amplified music, whether it's live music or even recorded music. There's more than likely going to be some sort of music playing at that site at least sometime during the week.
I would suggest you consider hours of operation.
Let's say like around Rice Stadium has concerts that have to go quiet at 10 p.m. Which if you spend a lot of money to go see Elton John and Billy Joel in concert, it upsets you, but you understand for the neighborhood. It's
I
10
think
p.m.
too, it's kind of like, Locke said, you know, none of those, the Dairy Bar closes at 8:45, and it's the latest place on Plantation. And so,
It's about the only place on Plantation until you get down to the old HEB shopping center.
Revitalization of plantation. Say it 6 times
It's
a
good
meeting.
stuff. I appreciate you going to work for this and seeing what we can find out.
It was a good package put together, David.
thanks for
Thank you.
All right, do we have anything to sign?
Yes, we have,
Got that.
do we have this one? Nothing. We don't make it. Oh, okay, didn't make it? Okay, we'll have to bring it up next time.
All right.
All right, items of community interest. John?
Don't think I have anything tonight.
Jeff?
I don't have anything. Thank you, Locke.
Harry?
I'd like to know about the hunk of concrete that they poured over there. I thought the original thing was gonna be a metallic tree or such, I thought, but
A money question, a money thing came up and they.
they don't have enough, or is it gonna be just a layout of a tree, or?
It is, stone all the way around, and then, it'll have stone on top, which is water jetted, similar to the water jetting on the entrance sign, but they're holding up on materials. Getting materials. It was originally a tree. The
Okay.
Governor's Achievement Award was $250,000. I think the bid when they opened it in the first round was $800,000.
Okay.
TxDOT wasn't, they asked us if we wanted to make up, they asked us if we wanted to make up the difference, and I said no. Thank you for asking.
So there's gonna be something on that incline?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be actually, it'll be the city logo, but water
Okay.
jetted into stone.
Okay.
No, it is not.
Tile, I call it stone, but it'll be water jetted into it.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else there?
I think so, yeah.
Joe?
Has the Resatch project started yet? The guy that we rushed through to get everything going for him, and
So we had a pre-construction meeting with the developer on Monday. No, wait, today's Tuesday. So Friday, we had it on Friday. We did. We had it on Friday, and it was a pretty good meeting, and we discussed a lot. You should start seeing some groundwork happening fairly shortly. Matt's over there shaking his head. So you should see some groundwork starting shortly. We are still working on the building permit packages, but that shouldn't stop them from starting to screen trees and moving dirt.
Eddie, could you give them an update on the whole process, since I don't think, since Joe had been involved with that thing, things have changed quite a bit.
All right, so, we ended up, putting some of the utility work on the contractor. So we're getting a new water main and a new sewer main on Pecan, and a new water main along Weisach. So this contractor that we had the meeting with on Friday is the civil construction contractor. They will come in and install our water mains and our sewer mains first before they ever get a permit from David to start going up. So we will have that part in place. They, like David said, they're starting this week on doing silt fence and putting fencing around trees, so you're gonna see some movement over there. They are gonna come in and start, drainage first, because there's only a few drainage crossings across the street. They've gotta resize some things and try to, they're definitely not gonna disturb the drainage system the way that it is. They're gonna try to improve it. But they're definitely not gonna do anything worse. They are putting in all new detention ponds in there. They're rerouting the water so it doesn't go directly to the street anymore and straight over to the ditch. So they're gonna improve those things. Water, hydrants are gonna be an issue. So there's gonna be a period of time where we're gonna have old hydrants and an old line in service while they're installing this new line and waiting for new hydrants. It's the same issue we're having everywhere. Parts are just hard to come by right now. Downtown, where our contractors are working right now, they have the same issue. We're gonna have old lines and new lines active at the same time for about 4 months before we can get any hydrants in to take out the old hydrants and abandon the old lines and move on. So yeah, that's where these guys are going. They will be coming back for permits. Once we do get the water lines and sewer lines in place, David will be allowing them to start building. There's only a couple areas that already have water and sewer. Those are along Holly and on the backside of Fern, where there's water and sewer already. David could technically give them a permit to start building there, but there's some other utility work that needs to be done in the way of gas lines, electric lines, telephone lines that are in the way of those buildings. So they're also working with the franchisees to try to get those things moved. So it's moving forward, but you're not gonna see any real movement for a couple of months at least before, there's actual real work taking place.
And the people that did most of the legwork before you and before council at that time are not with them anymore.
Yes, Mr. Stuckey has moved on. A new gentleman by the name of Adam Green has moved in and taken his place. So we've had a couple of meetings with him now. Same company, same everything. He's just a little higher up in the company. He's came over from Florida, I believe, and now he's taking over this Texas area. And so we wanted to have another meeting with him to make sure that everything Stuckey said still holds true, and he pretty much gave us the same spiel that Stuckey did. So we're pretty confident that he wasn't making it up on the fly, and this company is still doing the same project as it was back then.
The water hydrant at Yo Pond and Oyster Creek got hit again.
It did not get hit again. It blew off.
Blew off.
So when they put it back in, those hydrants are push-on valves. They're not bolt together. They're not mechanical flanged at all. And so when they put it back in, the dirt was still weak. It was actually there. It looked like it was good.
Yeah.
But it was off for about 3 or 4 weeks, and they didn't turn the water on. So the day that they did turn it on, that night, it developed a little leak, and the concrete thrust block behind it gave way, and it blew off. So it landed in that hole. So Utilities Department is currently looking at relocating it somewhere in that general area. The issue is that mast arm. They can't go in and chop a section of pipe out and put in mechanical joint fittings to hold it in place without depending on that concrete block. So they're looking in that area to try to find another place to move that hydrant where it'll give us the coverage. Unfortunately, again, parts are hard to come by right now. We're waiting on 10-inch fittings for that water main. So when those come in, we'll be able to move on that project as well.
That makes a better story than figuring out how a car hit it in that direction.
Invisible, no tires, no tire marks, yeah.
You know, and Eddie, I mentioned a while ago, and I don't mean to sound like I beat the dead horse, but, you know, we've got two corners, catty corners from each other, nothing but pipes coming out of the ground. And I know there's nothing, you know, we've got that church over there that's never acted, we've got this place that came in and clear cut a hole. It wasn't just a real beautiful place, but it was a green space.
Yep.
They come in and clear cut, and now we don't have anything there, and it makes you shake your head sometimes.
You have any issues with the permits for Plantation Villa?
Not at this time. I have seen the contractor on site. I did physically put eyes on him just last week. He was driving a street sweeper on the interior, but he's still there. I think he's still very hopeful that it's going to get going fast. Now, I can tout supply chain issues, and I can tout rising costs. And I have had a conversation with him even during the foundation stage as to how, you know, he was confiding in me to say how much additional this project was costing versus when it was originally bid. But he was still confident it was going to move forward. I can reach out to Billy over there and find out where we are on construction activity, because you're right, Mr. Reinhardt. All you see is all the concrete's poured and it's looking all nice and pretty and clean since he's over there sweeping it. But you're seeing pipes sticking up out of the ground, and at some point those pipes no longer become viable to connect onto, like the ones across 332 right there. That if they decide they're going to build on that slab, they're going to have an engineer evaluate the slab, and they're going to have to dig down into that slab to get good pipe to hook onto for those water connections. I hate to see a project not get going and stop and stall. And so I'll find out from Billy if he has a time frame, or if he still at least has a positive attitude.
Thank you.
Eddie, while you're up there, can you give us an update on the city, the downtown stuff?
Downtown, okay, downtown project, started out rough, but it's getting a little bit smoother. We started with one crew working on that way. They ran into a water main issue, a water pipe at the corner of that way and OCD surprised them. It was 45 across one of their excavations, so they hit it with a tractor and knocked a hole in it, and we had a little bit of a struggle trying to get the water off because there are old, ancient 10-inch valves there. And so they struggled with that for a couple of days. They got it fixed up, and they've got moving again. So since then, they've completed all the sewer along that way. The sewer main is in. On North Parking Place, they brought in a second crew to come work on North Parking Place so that they could hit the project on two ends and hopefully get ahead on their scheduling. The water line on North Parking Place is now in. We're waiting on bacteriological tests to come back negative so that we can get the stores along North Parking Place tied into that new line. Today they started working on Parking Way. They fell back to that end, the sanitary sewer crew, and they are starting to tie in water line tomorrow morning to begin running water main along that way back up to OCD. We're increasing the size of the pipe along that way to get to Westway, where we already have a 10-inch pipe that crosses 332, but we don't have a 10-inch feed for it. So with this project, we're trying to get a 10-inch feed over to that court. A long time ago, we put in a 10-inch feed there, and we did not put in the 8-inch at the same time, so the 8-inch was there existing. We had the 10-inch feed on this way, but when the state came in to do the highway, we had to eliminate that 10-inch feed. So Westway is a 10-inch crossing, but it's fed by an 8-inch line. So we're trying to increase the size on this project to get, more water volume to that side of town by increasing the pipe diameter. The next part of this project is going to be sewer on North Parking Place, and coming back to do the water tie-ins, and they're gonna finish the water line on that way. When they complete, whoever finishes their section first is gonna fall back and start doing the drainage from the worst house area all the way up to Circleway and hook down Circleway towards Bodega. And that's gonna be a large underground box right in the center of the street, so it's gonna be a little more traffic, there's gonna be more traffic issues with that one. This other work is outside of the pavement, that's where they're gonna get into the pavement, and that's when it's gonna get to be a problem driving in and out of that area.
What's the timeline for starting that part?
Starting that part, we're looking at about 4 to 6 weeks right now.
Then how long could that take?
It really wouldn't take that long. We're probably 4 to 6 weeks of worth of work there, but it'll be kind of a little traveling show down the road. So it'll be a traffic obstruction that people will have to drive around as they go through. Every day is gonna have its challenges because there are inlet boxes that they have to install on either side of the road as they go. So it's gonna be a rolling traffic zone all the way through there. And so it's gonna be messy, and we're just gonna have to work with it the best we can.
There are 8 phases, the way it's been planned, it's 8 phases on the actual completed project. And each of those phases is gonna take, my big guesstimation, 6 weeks. A total year, what is the total contract, the whole, timeline?
365 days.
365 days. We don't believe it's possible to finish that because of rain primarily, and because of our previous experience in downtown. They are a good contractor. We found out that they are, they have the staff, they have the equipment, and they have a good working, protocol. But still, you're working against unknowns, and the unknowns are the ones that are eating our lunch. We're finding structures that we thought were complete structures. They're not. They're partial structures underneath for drainage. And those surprises are coming up as they go in there and discover those.
Man, I didn't forget you. You
You're good, boss.
got anything else? Words of wisdom?
North
Canopy.
Parking Place Canopy, yes, that one's been fun too. They have managed to remove about 70% of the canopy, and they've gotten to the last couple of sections there, where it had a stucco bottom, which is a pain because it's a lot of weight hanging there. And the Taekwondo, the old Garrett's Pawn Shop has a metal roof up there, and they've got some big I-beams and stuff, so the contractor's reevaluating on how to take those down. We also found out that there's some drainage issues with the roof over the Cattery and the Smith Hart's building. The roof actually drains to the front when all the other roofs drain to the back. So we're having to redesign the way that the little parapet wall facade goes over that particular property. And the Taekwondo, because it's metal and not wood like the others, we've got to come up with the design to seal the attic space and attach to the metal roof. And then there are other buildings where the structural engineer had assumed that there was a wooden wall behind a brick veneer, and it's actually a clay block behind a brick veneer in front of another brick veneer. And so there's no wood in there to be had, so they are currently testing fasteners, or scheduling the test for the fasteners. We're waiting for fasteners because it's another thing that's hard to come by right now. The contractor is going to install the fasteners, and we're going to have our lab there downtown come in and do a pull test on the fasteners to satisfy the structural engineers' design requirements, so they can begin designing an attachment process for that facade on the buildings. So yeah, we're
Some of those canopies,
dragging.
only those canopies on that side of North Parking Place are coming down. That's because the difference of elevation from the street to the doorway, we're gonna completely revamp that, have to put in ramps and all these type of things. That's why those canopies are having to go out. The rest of the canopies around downtown are gonna remain the way they are. We're not gonna be touching those. So,
The bricks on the apartments that came off on the wind, do they not have fasteners up to the wall to hold those bricks to the wall?
not, no.
I thought you put little
Did you see
bevel
it? I didn't-
pieces
I
to.
didn't see it.
No,
we were-
at that period of time, they weren't putting.
But
Are we
now-
referring to Monaco Villa?
Huh?
Are we referring to Monaco Villa?
What was it? Wood Hall, the old Wood Hollow Apartments?
Say again?
Wood Hollow Apartments? Is that the one?
Here on 332.
Yes,
Yeah.
so our inspectors have inspected those with the ties at 16 inches on center.
So they do
The
have
old brick
ties,
house?
okay. And they didn't.
No,
The
no,
ones
not,
that
we're not talking
were
about the old
downtown
brick. We're
ones.
talking about what was put up there
They're
after
not
it fell off.
Saving the metal during the war.
So the new
Yeah,
stuff
it
does.
probably was.
Yeah.
That's probably-
The other one is the 101 Winding Way. So they did go back, the contractor talked to the architect and said, you're silly, we're just gonna chop this curb out and redo it right, and so that's what they did. They cut the curb down, they drilled into the sidewalk, they extended out the 15 inches, put it all the way through there, cleaned it up, and they put what's called a water stop, in that gap, that expansion joint. They just haven't been able to remove it and seal it with the sealant yet because of the weather. We've just had a few days of rain and then a few dry days back and forth, and so they haven't moved on it yet. So it is completed the way that you guys specified. We're just waiting for that final sealant to go in, and I'll bring you a picture of the final product.
Did it look good?
It does look good. I mean, it's an extra wide curb, but it really, you can't tell unless you knew there was a problem. It just looks like an architectural accent. And that's it. That's all I got.
Good, thank you, Eddie.
Dinner time.
Yes, sir. Go find a taco truck.
I can find them on plantations sporadically placed.
Yeah.
Modesto, is there anything new that you can share with us? Anything going on?
No, I've talked to now.
You know, any new businesses or anything new happening or?
David is the new business person. He updates council every year.
So yeah, as far as new businesses are concerned, we have permits either issued or in-house for La Madeleine's, for McAllister's Deli, for Family Dollar, Taco Bueno. Nope, don't have anything for Harbor Freight. I know that name's been going around the community, but that might just be the new Olive Garden.
Oh,
What did you say?
Harbor Freight.
Taco Bueno is gonna be
Where Taco Cabana was. And if you're not familiar with Taco Bueno, I know that they are a fast food taco establishment that took roots up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's where I first ran into them. Oh, some 30 years ago. So they are making their expansion south. I think that, Lake Jackson is probably a pretty exciting destination for Taco Bueno. It's been 30-something years since I've had Taco Bueno, so I'm not going to comment on that. That's
What's a good use of a vacant building?
It is. I'm glad to see something going back in there. We have some batting cages that are set to open up soon in the old HEB over on Plantation and Dixie. Yep. Batting cages, golf simulations,
Plantation revitalization.
that
So
sort.
you say, so you feel like La Madeline and McAllister's are a pretty done deal?
Yes, we have plans in for both of those, and they're going to go next door to each other in the Willard property. Is that what that is? Did I get that right? So,
What's replacing Smith Arts, do we know?
I don't know at this time. Rumors have been popping around that we're getting a Marco's Pizza, but I don't know if it's slated for that or if that's 101 Winding Way.
I believe
Yeah.
the one is an Italian, and they call that restaurant Grazia.
Like the one in Pearland?
Like the one in Pearland,
Okay. See, there you go.
You're such a connoisseur of fine dining.
Only a fine cuisine.
Yeah, he might be living in their kitchen. We don't know.
Is Sandra moving
Stop.
All
somewhere?
right, we're done talking about food. Can we go eat now?
Is Sandra moving somewhere else with ours? Do we know?
David, do you know if Sandra's moving somewhere else? Sandra Smithart? You know if she found a place?
That I do not know.
I heard she was close. That's what a couple people told me at the meeting the other day, that because she couldn't find a place, so she just shut it.
Well,
Kind of too bad.
good burgers.
All right.
And five.
Thank you, David.
I missed my front opening.
Anything else that's gotta be, okay. Next meeting is April the 5th, is that correct? Everybody good for that? We'll have a quorum,
Maybe.
maybe? All right. Thank y'all very much. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you for running such a fine show.
Best in the West.